A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to say.
You got f***ing grow, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast, available live at twitch.tv/Gallant Says and youtube.com/Paul Gallant, but also available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. If you haven't already, please rate, review, tell a friend, maybe even roast it. It is Wednesday, February 8th of 2023 at about 1:19 Central Time. Taking a look at the television in the GallantSays.com command center. And right now, isn't it fitting that the day after our president gave the State of the Union, that Roger Goodell is essentially doing the same thing with the NFL, since he is the commissioner. Right now it says on my television, this is the Roger Goodell Super Bowl 57 press conference Sports Center special. Yeah. Look, Roger Goodell sucks. He has an ego about him that I think makes him believe that he is a big piece of this league. I know that whenever the NFL draft starts, he goes, "Hey, come on!" in a very robotic fashion, trying to get people to boo him. But he's a stuffed shirt egomaniac, and this press conference is going to feature probably all of the softball questions, many of which he was made aware of before they were being asked so that he could not be uncomfortable. I have seen how these press conferences go. I went to one in the wake of Deflategate because I wanted to ask Roger Goodell, "Hey, my Lord and Savior Tom Brady, so you spent millions of dollars on a report to come to the conclusion that it's more probable than not that Tom Brady deflated footballs. The fuck's up with that?" I was going to ask it like that. Probably was an unprofessional way to go about it, but whatever. But the problem is you don't actually get an opportunity to ask those questions, and I hate settings like that. And honestly, the more and more I think about it, the more and more press conferences are really BS. Ryan Tracy asks, is this Goodell sentiment filtered through Brady fandom or youtube.com/Paul Gallant? He asks it on, yeah, I mean, part of it has to do with the Brady fandom. He totally fucked over Brady. Brady got the same suspension as Ben Roethlisberger for what he did in Millersville, Georgia, allegedly. Look that up. It's ridiculous that Brady got suspended 4 games for that. A fine, that would have made sense. 4-game suspension for that bullshit when all the other quarterbacks in the league do it. Complete bullshit. He's been smeared forever by it. Forever. Not chillin' on twitch.tv/Gallant Says asks, is that Tucker Carlson clip a deepfake? Nope. I got canceled once on television. That was fun, especially considering the person doing said reporting and everybody else involved that led to it actually reaching Tucker Carlson's news desk. Not one of those people asked me for my side of the story. Bullshit, in my opinion, but hey, you move on with life, and maybe someday I'll actually do an episode where I focus entirely on what happened during Chill Dog DAWG Gate. Life and Sports Talk with Jake is responding to the question that I have to open up the show. Who would you rather have as a teammate, Kyrie Irving or Kyler Murray? Now, I don't know how many of you guys paid attention to an interview that J.J. Watt did with Dan Patrick. This interview that Watt did with Dan Patrick featured some rather awkward moments. I'm about to pull it up on my computer here. And it's funny because Kyler Murray himself has been the subject of interviews with Dan Patrick where things have gotten rather awkward. I think what's noteworthy about those Kyler Murray ones is that apparently those Kyler Murray interviews are things that people brought up and thought to themselves, you know what, maybe we can't draft Kyler Murray because of this. But let me pull up the moment in the interview where Dan Patrick tries to get J.J. Watt to talk about his former teammate in Arizona. Kyler Murray, hang on a second. We got that. We got this. Scuba loop doo wop. And here we go. Oh, it's going to do that thing where I have to reload it, huh? Hang on a sec.
Figure out Kyler Murray.
Okay.
He was great in high school, great in college, but I don't know. I'm trying to be fair to him. I think it's too much. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he's a great talent.
What makes you say that?
Well, the great talent, I can see that, but is he a great leader? Maybe it's asking somebody that age to do something, and that's not fair to him. I don't know. I just get it. I don't know where his trajectory is. It feels like Jalen Hurts has a better sense of who Jalen Hurts is than Kyler Murray does.
This is some deep stuff. I was not prepared for the deep level of questioning this morning.
Yeah, I normally don't get that deep.
No, I was not ready to go into the psychological aspects of players that are not myself.
What's interesting about that moment, if you guys have watched a lot of Dan Patrick or listened to a lot of Dan Patrick, he's a master of interviews. He's really good at getting to the point with a question. And right there, you could tell he was a little bit uncomfortable about how to ask J.J. Watt about one of his ex-teammates. So he made a couple of statements there, and I think he was wondering if J.J. Watt would react. And you could tell that J.J. Watt, with his beautiful, voluminous spiked hair there, was rather uncomfortable answering that question. And I don't blame J.J. for feeling that way. I think a lot of players in the league, even if they have issues with a player that they played with, they're going to keep that shit close to the vest. They don't want to talk shit about somebody else behind their back in a public setting like this. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are curious about what Kyler Murray actually was like. So if you go a little bit further in this interview that Dan Patrick and J.J. Watt did with one another, and hang on a second, let me pull it up again. This weird feature with Twitter where you got to refresh it to play a clip. Hang on a second, cue it to the right point. This is riveting audio right now for those who are listening to this podcast. Here is more J.J. Watt with Dan Patrick.
A player to watch.
I'll let you off the hook. You don't have to answer Kyler Murray.
I'm not. I'm sitting here. I'm just. You're saying it was easy. The guy won 4 state championships in high school. He won a national champion. No, not a national championship, but he won a Heisman in college.
It was too easy. Now you have to outthink people. Now you have to put in the effort. Everybody's great.
Why didn't you do it if it was so easy?
I got as many surgeries as you have.
Do you?
Yeah.
How many do you have? Let's hear them.
Shoulder, hand, eyes, replacement knee, 7 surgeries.
All right, that's not
Botox.
Oh, am I on my way to that? Is that coming up?
Yes,
yeah?
yes, it is.
Oh, great.
Yeah. That was a good job by Dan Patrick to pull up out of that moment in the interview where we're starting to get a little bit awkward. So Dan Patrick is getting at something that we've known about Kyler Murray for a while. He is very weird, strange, awkward at best. As a teammate, seems like he sucks. I base that off of the past season of Hard Knocks in season about the Arizona Cardinals, the reports during the offseason about how this guy doesn't study a lot of film, him pouting at the end of that Cardinals-Rams game in the playoffs last year, that Monday game. There's a lot of things that I think if you were to take a look at Kyler Murray and objectively weigh in on what he is as a teammate, you would say, fuck that. Life and Sports Talk with Jake, though, says he would rather have Kyler Murray at youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Seems like the majority of quarterbacks are divas, but Kyrie Irving is different. He really put himself out there and couldn't handle the criticism. So now let's shift into Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving had a introductory press conference with the Dallas Mavericks. It was yesterday, and to the surprise of, I think, no one, Kyler Murray decided that this was the time for him to talk about how he felt disrespected during his time in Brooklyn. Here is Kyrie Irving.
See today, I just know I want to be places where I'm celebrated and not just tolerated or just kind of dealt with in a way that doesn't make me feel respected. And there were times throughout this process when I was in Brooklyn where I felt very disrespected, and my talent, I work extremely hard at what I do. No one ever talks about my work ethic though. Everyone talks about what I'm doing off the floor. So,
all right, he says, no one ever talks about my work ethic. Everyone talks about what I do off the court because you've been fucking off the court, Kyrie. That's why. Work ethic. How and why would anyone talk about the effort you put in at practice, to being the ball handler you are, to being the basketball player you are, when that was not the story about you over the last couple of years? The big story about Kyrie Irving has been his unavailability, and whether he was taking a stand because he was against vaccines or taking a stand because he just likes to be difficult, who's at times seems like someone who doesn't actually want to play basketball, whatever his rationale was, you are no longer a basketball player in that mode when you're not playing. So of course people are going to talk about you in a different way. Respect is earned. Respect is earned by people that don't know you when they see you on a regular basis doing your job. He didn't do his job. It's easy to get triggered by Kyrie Irving because of the casual indifference with which he talks about the things that he has gone through. Let's go back and get a little bit more Kyrie Irving here. And once again, I'm going to have to refresh the video, and this is ridiculous. I cannot stand how annoying it is to just play audio on this damn thing.
Places where I'm celebrated.
Second, and that is playing off of the screen. Let's shift ahead. Oh my God, I'm going to kill someone. This is not fun. I don't know why it's taking so long to load. Hang on a second. Refreshing one more time. I feel like I'm not going to be able to use... I got to stop using Microsoft Edge to play these videos.
Places where
I really got to stop with that. All right, where... I think... Oh my God, it's happening again. I've pressed the refresh button several times. Whenever I press refresh, it moves me to Bing's search engine. Why does Microsoft Edge automatically install itself as your browser on this computer? Anyway, finally, we got it up. A follow-up question was asked of Kyrie Irving about why he feels people disrespect him. Here is Kyrie Irving.
What did you feel like the Nets did that was disrespectful to you?
I think that's another day where I could really go into detail about it. I'm not the person to really speak on names and go to someone behind their back and try to leak stuff to the media. That's never been me. Now, I've been an audience member watching people say things about me that ultimately just fall off my shoulder. I'm really in a place that I'm grateful that I got to grow into over the last year and a half, 2 years. Spending time away from the basketball court gave me time to really appreciate life in a new way. And I just know I need healthy boundaries, especially in this entertainment business. There's a lot of disrespect that goes on with people's families, with their names, and I'm just not with it. So it's not personal against any of those guys against in the front office. It's just what I'm willing to accept. And I took a chance, and luckily and fortunately, the Dallas Mavericks picked me up. So it's just all what I can control.
Spare me with that. That's all I can control. That's a load of bullshit, too. I hate it when players who are questioned about why they feel a certain way say, that's not for me to talk about right now. Well, when is it going to be the time for you to talk about it? We went through this same bullshit with Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. The exact same bullshit. He said the same stuff. He said, well, I can't talk about it now, but at some point, I will tell you what actually happened. No, you won't. You're just saying that right now. I'm not one to talk trash about others behind their back. Well, are you one to defend yourself and your honor? You claim you are being disrespected. People want to know why you feel you were disrespected. How can they believe you when you're not telling us how they did it? You simply can't. So that's just a small part of Kyrie Irving at his press conference. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Life and Sports Talk with Jake says Celtics, Cavs, Nets, now Mavericks. A lot of teams are shifting too. I'd like to hear those teams' perspectives on him. Boston was terrible. He was terrible in Boston. And they honestly treated him very fairly considering all the bullshit that he did. And it's really funny to see fan bases across basketball, when they welcome Kyrie Irving in with open arms, go out of their way to explain away the bullshit. And also at the same time, as try to explain that it's going to be different this time around, as if the other people that have been in relationships with Kyler Murray, as if his ex-spouses, if you will, aren't 100% right or in some way right about him. Nope. They just didn't understand Kyrie Irving. They just didn't appreciate his majesty. Kyrie Irving was asked if he deleted an apology that he had put up on Instagram for posting a video that seemed to have been made by a unhinged fellow, 3.5 hours long. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'm actually going to have to look this up. I believe the movie was called Hebrews to Negro. It cost like $40. Wake Up, Black America. It's a 2018 film. It's 3.5 hours that I have no interest in ever watching. But Kyrie Irving posted a link to that one day, I think on Amazon, and it blew up, and there's a lot of anti-Semitic thoughts that are shared in that movie. That's a class of folks that you don't go after these days unless you want to deal with a massive shitstorm. And when you're posting something like that, even if you're just saying, I want people to be aware of it, well, you got to know what's in it, because people are going to make their own interpretations about why you posted that out. Are you anti-Semitic? Do you not like Jewish people? People from Israel? Do you believe this weird conspiracy theory that this guy that put the video out there has? Anyway, at that press conference yesterday, Kyrie Irving was asked if he'd deleted said video. Here is that audio.
Can you explain?
Yeah, I delete a lot of things on my Instagram. You know, I've had things that have happened before in my life, probably not as drastic of that moment, which led to a lot of confusion and uncertainty, I felt like, and what I meant and what I stand for. And I had to sit up in these mics and explain to the world who I am when I know who I am. So
I know who I am. That's another tired trope. Sure, you know who you are, but anyone that sees you post that does not know who you are. And can you fault them for disrespecting you when you put that out without any thought? Seems like something a careless person would do. Thus, disrespect. More Kyrie Irving.
You know, I delete things all the time, and it's no disrespect to anyone within the community. Just living my life.
I delete things all the time. I'm just living my life. Well, what about an apology for something that got you suspended for 10 games? Were you really remorseful for it? Did you apologize because the NBA told you to so that they would perhaps shrink your suspension a little bit? Anyway, Kyrie at yesterday's opening press conference with the Dallas Mavericks continues.
Do you stand by the apology? Do you stand by the words in the apology?
I stand by who I am and why I apologized. And I did it because I care about my family, and I have Jewish members of my family that...
Okay, we got to pause again. So he stands by who he is as a person. he doesn't seem to stand by his actual apology and seems to be completely pissing on said apology. And now he's bringing up the most convenient shield that athletes, politicians bring up. Family. Don't ask me about my family. What the fuck are you, Dom Toretto? Anyway, Kyrie goes on a long diatribe about family and how the media has not researched his Jewish ancestry nearly enough.
That care for me deeply. Did the media know that beforehand when they called me that word anti-Semitic? No. Did they know anything about my family? No. Everything was assumed. Everything was put out before I had anything to say.
I don't buy into the idea that he has Jewish family members. Maybe I'm wrong there. He posted that video. People pushed back against it because there's anti-Semitic ideals in there. And why the fuck would people go through the trouble of looking up Kyrie Irving's family history when that video is put out there? Like, that's not the first thing that's going to come to mind. And he acts like, oh, this is who's first reporting it. Kyrie, you posted it from your own fucking Twitter account. Like, what are you fucking talking about, dude? You posted it yourself. This was not a matter of first. This was a matter of why the fuck did you do that? And you're not giving explanations here. You're hiding and doing what you've done a lot of over the last couple of years, which is blame the media. More Kyrie Irving.
And I reacted instead of responding emotionally maturely. I didn't need to be defensive or go at anybody. So I stand by my apology and I stand by my people everywhere. All walks of life, all races, all religions.
Hell yeah, dude.
Were those Jewish people in your family, did they talk to you about that film and were they hurt by you posting it?
I've had a lot of conversations about world history.
I've had a lot of conversations about world history. When he's asked if the Jewish members of his family had anything to say, he said, I've had a lot of conversations about world history. This is the classic deflection at a press conference so that he can talk about something else entirely. We all know how this works. As someone who works in sports talk radio and has to talk for a while and sometimes has to filibuster for a piece of audio to get ready to play. These are the kind of things that we've learned how to do, and we also know when it's happening with an athlete or a politician in front of us too. More Kyrie Irving.
What was contained in there was contained in there. I didn't agree with everything. I've been up here saying that. I'm just going to leave it at that. My family is my family. If the media cared about my family and actually, I'm not saying all the media, I don't want to get at anybody, but
if the media cared about my family, Kyrie, you're a black man. People aren't going to make the assumption that you're Jewish and you posted this without thinking and you're bringing up your fucking family. Like, get the fuck out of here with this stuff, dude. Anyway, more Kyrie.
Specific media members actually care to do research instead of being the first to report things, then they would know where I come from. So the diversity of my family is beautiful.
Oh my God. All right, I'm done. I can't do anymore. The diversity of my family is beautiful. He loves to talk in a way that makes him seem like he's a lot smarter than he actually is. There's an air of condescension with everything that came out there in that press conference. And maybe there really are some people in his family who are Jewish. But does that erase the fact that you posted a link to a video that could have been hurtful for a lot of people to see? No. You fucked up. What's wrong with saying, I fucked up? Should have watched the whole thing. Instead, you got to double down. Because God forbid you ever admit that you're not as intelligent as you want everyone to think. Ugh, it's annoying. So if I've got to pick between Kyrie Irving and Kyler Murray, at least Kyler plays. From the sound of things, Kyrie Irving is very well liked in NBA locker rooms. Like, he's got a lot of players who dap him up after a game and clearly seem to think like he's a good guy. So maybe he's different talking to a microphone than he is in person. He seems like he would have a lot of annoying conspiracy theories, but there is an element when it comes to Kyler Murray. He's all about himself. He'll throw others under the bus when things don't go his way. And generally, I don't think would even try to be your friend. I think he just is his own entity. And that's not something that I feel like is going to work long-term as a quarterback. But credit to Kyler, he did get paid. He did get paid. Last night in the NBA, we saw LeBron James set the record for most points scored all time. And it was over the top. They stopped the game with 10 seconds left, a game that the Lakers would go on to lose 133-130 to the Oklahoma City Thunder, so that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar could come on the court, talk with him, hug him, give him a basketball, and then eventually LeBron got a microphone to speak about it. Some people are actually mad about this moment.
Dreamt this even better than what it is tonight, so fuck, man. Thank you, guys.
Oh, what a moment.
Some people are mad about LeBron James saying fuck. I'm not mad about LeBron James saying fuck. Get over it. I saw my buddy Sean Bajani tweeting about it. I wasn't sure if he was fucking around like I was last night during the celebration. I'm wearing a Celtics jersey. I don't like the Lakers, and I've never liked LeBron James as a fan, but I can, at the very least, say that LeBron's the best basketball player I've seen the entire career of. I wasn't around for most of Michael Jordan's heyday. There is a mythology attached to Michael Jordan that I'm not sure exists in the same way or ever will exist in the same way with LeBron. But LeBron has won 4 MVPs. He has won 4 titles. He's been to a ton of titles on teams that probably didn't belong in the NBA Finals. He's even won a couple of those finals. I can admit that there is a strong argument to be made that LeBron is one of the best players of all time. But at the same time, basketball is a team game. It is a team game. Do we have to stop the game in the middle of it to honor LeBron for something that we all knew he was going to get? It's not like it's surprising that he got the record for most points scored in a career. We all knew it was going to happen eventually. Do we need to stop the game in the moment? Maybe we did because the Lakers did go on to lose. But I felt like that was annoying. And to be consistent, and especially because there are some who will say like, oh, Paul, that's racist. What about Drew Brees? When Drew Brees broke the record for all-time passing yards, it was an absolute annoying clusterfuck. Here it is, New Orleans, Washington, and it happened on a 62-yard touchdown pass, which is impressive as opposed to LeBron's fadeaway where there was a guy open in the post that he could have thrown to and he shoots the fadeaway anyway. But the touchdown reception happens, and the NFL announced before that they were going to pause the game when it happened, but it was a natural pausing of the game. They scored a touchdown. It wasn't like after just a mid-range jumper with 10 seconds left in the third quarter. They probably could have let the third quarter play out. I suppose they had to celebrate that moment right there. This is pretty cool to see all Drew Brees' teammates celebrating with him. I don't think he got quite the same with LeBron because there's a lot of issues going on behind the scenes with the Lakers, with the trade deadline right around the corner, with LeBron clearly trying to get Russell Westbrook traded for Kyrie Irving, with probably Anthony Davis looking at himself in the mirror and wondering, hey, what's happening next for me? Am I going to be stuck with LeBron the rest of his career? But they paused the game when Drew Brees threw that touchdown pass. Let's see how much further this goes. His family came on the field. He gets to essentially like walk around holding the football, and he gets a certificate, I guess, from the referees. And it was a cool moment. Drew Brees is a folk hero there. There's David Baker from the NFL Hall of Fame talking with him. He hugs his family. I mean, it was a cool moment, but they got back to it. They kicked the extra point. They move on. With LeBron getting the all-time points record, it just continued and it continued and it continued. And as someone who likes basketball because it's a team game and who likes football because it's a team game too, I don't know. I was a little annoyed by the entire, I guess, show after everything happened. And I am curious about the way things are going behind the scenes, because this is a video of everyone on the Lakers after LeBron had broken the record. Anthony Davis sits down on the bench. LeBron hits the shot. Davis stays on the bench. Not even really clapping. Catch it one more time. He's just sitting there. Hands aren't even moving. He gets up. I guess he's like, all right, I guess I got to go celebrate this now. Something's going on behind the scenes in LA. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that LeBron's been a bit insufferable as a teammate for a lot of his career. I mean, there's a reason that Kyrie Irving eventually left Cleveland, wanted to leave Cleveland. I know there was a trade, but he didn't want to be there anymore. He didn't want to play with LeBron anymore. I don't think he wanted to be the secondary figure to LeBron. Speaking of secondary figures, there's always been a question about who's secondary between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. On the Let's Go podcast with Tom Brady and Jim Gray, Bill Belichick joined, and Brady and Belichick talked about the idea that there was a rift between the two. Because everyone has tried to give Brady the majority of the credit for their entire run together with the way things have gone the last couple of years. But I think that's a byproduct of people remembering what players and teams and coaches and sports do last. What we have seen of late from Bill Belichick without Tom Brady has not been great. What we saw from Brady post Bill Belichick was a Super Bowl championship. But I think people have to realize that if you take a look at the totality of Tom Brady's career, a man who I believe to be my Lord and Savior, you got to remember that the first 3 titles that the Patriots won were won because of their defense. The early 2000s Patriots defense is one of the best defenses ever. I don't think they get the same credit as the early 2000s Ravens, the Legion of Boom Seahawks, but they should. They were a fucking unit. They were in the AFC at the same time as Peyton Manning, and they gave Peyton Manning fits. The Patriots don't win any of those 3 Super Bowls without Belichick as the mastermind behind that defense, which does have some players who are Hall of Famers and borderline Hall of Famers, but we're not talking about any of the true greatest of all times on the defensive side of things. But we are talking about some damn good players. Whatever the case, Belichick deserves credit for the first half if we're going to talk about their partnership. Brady deserves credit for the second half, though obviously both did have their own contributions. Brady, the early part of his career, he didn't make mistakes in the postseason. Belichick, the later part of his career with the Super Bowls that the Patriots won, always had good defenses for Tom Brady on the other side of the football. There's a great partnership. And at the end, I've hated the way that people have made it seem as if the two of them hate each other through books and podcasts and interviews and things. So Brady actually weighed in on this on the Let's Go podcast.
I think for me, there's nobody I'd rather be associated with. And I think that from my standpoint, I think it's always such a stupid conversation to say, you know, Brady versus Belichick, because in my mind, that's not what partnerships are about. Coach couldn't play quarterback and I couldn't coach. And I think the best part about football is, and the coach says it a lot, do your job. And he asked me to play quarterback. He didn't ask me to coach. And, you know, I didn't want him playing quarterback. I just wanted him to coach. I'd seen him throw, so he definitely wasn't playing quarterback. In my view, it was just people always trying to pull us apart. And I don't think we ever even felt that with each other. We never were trying to pull each other apart. We actually were always trying to go in the same direction. And I think when we were in New England for 20 years together, you know, they get tired of writing the same story. So, you know, once they write all the nice things and championships and this, and then they just start going, well, this works. Let's start trying to divide them. I never really appreciated those, you know, ways that people would try to do that. He and I always had a great relationship, and we met all the time. And did we always see everything exactly the same way? Who does in life? You know, what close relationship can you have where everything goes, you know, like a bright sunny day? No, there are moments that, you know, it was never intolerable. I mean, but it was always just, I would say, healthy debates about certain things. And we always talked about him face to face. And I think there's one thing I appreciate about Coach Belichick in life is he's not afraid to have a hard conversation too. And we didn't always agree, but we always respected each other. I know he respected me for the job that I did, and I certainly did the same. And I think even when you go away from each other, you respect each other probably that much more. I certainly did, because I realized the commitment that he was trying to make to get our team to win.
I've always said this. Tom's heard it every year, time after time. Players win games. Players win games. You can't win games without great players, and coaches can lose them. And if coaches don't give the players a good opportunity, give them a chance where they can have a fair fight and can win on their ability, then, great players can't overcome bad coaching. So to me, my job was always give the team a chance to win, put together a good team. And, Tom was the greatest player on many, many good teams that we had, but it's teams that win championships. And I'd say the one thing about Tom that it was always impressive is how he was the target every week. He had the bullseye on his back every week, and every week he came through and delivered. And Tom could always bring out the best of their skills. So it was James White, running backs or whoever, whatever the position was, Kevin Falk. He made all those players great by understanding what their strengths were and understood how to use their strengths. Ultimately, again, of all the things that Tom was great at, I think that was, really his top quality was he made everybody around him better and utilized the skills that those players had and avoided the ones maybe they weren't as good at.
It was great hearing that on podcast form. To me, I enjoyed hearing it because I always wanted these guys to publicly show that they still supported each other. And I'm sure that there is an element of those two, like, making sure that as they get closer and closer to the end for Belichick, are at the end for Brady, that people don't talk about this as something that maybe would overshadow what they accomplished together. Because we've seen that, of course, with, the 90s Chicago Bulls, the general manager who put them together. He gets a lot of shit for potentially driving a wedge that, split everybody up. So, that's something that I do wonder about going forward. Like, when we see another partnership that's maybe somewhat similar to this, are we going to hear all those same kind of stories that come out about who deserves credit and who disliked who at the end? It happens in all sorts of sports. And I do think there was, at a point in time, a divide between Brady and Belichick where they maybe were mad at each other. But I also think that they've made up. I think that makeup might have happened after the Patriots-Bucks game. Brady's return to Foxborough towards the beginning of the 2021 season. Anyway, one last thing before we hit the road. And sorry, this show has been a little bit messy, but I did want to talk about Last of Us Episode 4. So in case you haven't actually watched the show or seen it or heard about it, you still plan on watching it, I'm on episode number 5, which comes out on Sunday. Here is what we saw in episode 4. That's the spoiler alert horn one more time. There we go. Maybe a little bit too loud that time. So the episode was called, what was the title of the episode? Honestly, I don't even know. Good job, Paul. But Please Hold My Hand. Joel, played by Pedro Pascal, and Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey, are driving across the country. And I think the thing that has surprised me most about this show, maybe not the rapport that we're seeing between Joel and Ellie, but specifically Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, who I do think are two very talented actors. There's a real chemistry between the two. I did not expect the show to be funny. I thought it would be a lot more dark. It's one of the things I didn't like about The Walking Dead as a television show. It sometimes took itself a tad too seriously. Now, maybe that's because of the comic books that it was based on, but everything was serious at all times. This show has some real moments of lightheartedness. There are some dark moments, and you saw it in this episode because they get into Kansas City. There's a roadblock of sorts, and you see Ellie shoot a person, at least on camera, for the first time. She's maybe killed someone before, and Joel has to finish him off as the guy is basically begging and begging and begging for his life. That moment was hard to watch, even if that guy was, a bastard trying to raid them as they're trying to kill them and get their stuff as they drove through. It did humanize him to an extent, and it really feels like this show is going to do exactly what I want in a television show. I think we've seen it in Game of Thrones. I think we've seen it sometimes in some of the Marvel movies when it comes to humanizing the villains. I want everyone to be humanized. I want the world to be one that is entirely gray, and it seems like that's what we're about to get with Kathleen, who has been introduced to The Last of Us at the very end of this episode, who seems to be like the chief of Kansas City. She's played by Melanie Linsky, who you might remember from the TV show Yellow Jackets on Showtime. She seems like a real, I'm going to fuck you up gangster. And I'm really intrigued to see what this character will bring to the table. Per the video games, which I have never played, supposedly when they make the stop in Pittsburgh, not Kansas City, it's a rather nondescript enemy that they face. This actually feels like an enemy where you're going to look at it in a different lens and maybe understand why they are the way that they are. I thought Game of Thrones always did a great job with that. So that has been pretty exciting. That and the sense of humor of the show. Big thanks to everybody who tuned into today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. We do this every single day, generally from about 1 to 1:30. Been getting off to a late start. I got to get out of the office a little bit more quickly at the end of every single show every day. But I really appreciate everybody who did tune in for today's episode. Twitch.tv/Gallant Says, YouTube.com/Paul Gallant if you want to watch the video version of this show. Of course, it's also available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Until tomorrow at 1 o'clock, so long, farewell, have yourselves a wonderful Wednesday.